So today is September 27th. It's 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, and this is our weekly Latin studies meeting. I'm in North Carolina as well. I'm in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Yes, I live in North Carolina, down by Charlotte, about 30 minutes east of Charlotte. We moved to Charlotte around 2006. We moved to North Carolina from New Jersey. So we were originally from New Jersey, from the Northeast. We moved down to North Carolina. And to tell you the truth, I've done nothing but work since I moved down here. So I don't even know much about North Carolina. I don't know much about where different towns are or things like that. I sort of still have a New Jersey brain in North Carolina. I hardly know about the roads around my house where I live. We live out in the country, so it's nice and quiet. So we've got Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina. We've got Mexico, Connecticut. So a bunch of East Coast students. The 12:58. We'll give everyone a few more minutes to settle in. Be ready to type a little bit if you can today. I'm gonna do a little quizzing with you and give you a chance to type your answers, kind of a speed quiz to see how you do. So get yourself set up to type a little in the chat. I had asked before students would just let us know where you're at. If you're in the US, what state you're in. If you're not in the US, what country you're in. Let us know what time it is where you are. Sometimes it's fun to see those things. We have students in Australia who are a day ahead of us, and sometimes it gets pretty interesting. So we've got Rhode Island here, Colorado. Bunch of East Coast students. I see everyone's got about the same time for most people. England. Henry, I think you're about 5 hours ahead of us. So is it like 6 o'clock p.m.? Yeah, I thought so. Okay. I also saw Florida come through there. Illinois. So Illinois is 1 hour behind us. That's Central Time. Well, the best way to learn to type fast is to just practice typing. So you just have to get used to it. It's sort of funny because I never had any typing classes or anything like that when I was a kid. So I never really learned to type. I just learned by doing it. San Antonio, Texas, I see. See if looks like we're settling in here. It just takes time to get comfortable typing. You need to do it. I sort of type in a funny way because, like I said, I never took formal typing lessons. So my left hand is my weak hand, and it's kind of dopey. I use it to like type just a few keys, and then I type most of the keys with my right hand. My wife makes fun of me, but it works. All right, 101. We'll just give a couple more minutes. We've got about 20 students or so in here. Give a couple more minutes. The other thing, while we're just waiting here, let me know if you're in Latin reading, let me know what lesson number you're working on, or you can just give me the chapter and verse that you've been studying. And everyone's in different lessons, so don't worry if you're just getting started. Just let me know what lesson you're on. And it looks like you need to practice typing, since you wrote that you're on Lespum 4. So lesson 2, 3, 4, I saw an 8, 3 and 4, 2, lesson 2, lesson 4. So it looks like a bunch of students just getting going with Latin reading. That's good. Latin reading 2. Okay, so good. All right, so it's 1:02. We've got a bunch of students in the room, so let's go ahead and get started. Today, what I'd like to do is work on Latin reading a little bit, and we're just going to look at the first 2 lessons. So when I asked you what lesson you're working on, Josh, I see you're way ahead there in lesson 33, almost finished. That's good. What I'd like to do is just take the lessons that we have in the online courses and add a little bit to them in our meetings. So I'm not going to reteach all of the stuff that's already taught in the online courses. It's never as good, because when I make the lessons, I can take my time, put all the details in it, make sure everything is perfect. When we have live classes, what I'd like to do is sort of go into a little more detail on the lessons, or do some things that I can't do in the written lesson, like talk about how these Latin words are used to make English words, to develop your English vocabulary and things like that. So we're just going to take our Latin class time to sort of add more information to what's in the written lessons. But again, these live meetings are not meant to replace the online studies. That's really where you need to focus and get those tasks and assignments done, so you get credit for everything. These live class meetings are intended really to help you to think a little more deeply about the lessons, understand the lessons more fully, become more comfortable with the lessons, and so on. All right, so what I'd like to do, as I said, we're going to have a little quiz time here. So get yourself ready to type a little bit. I'm going to give you a word, and I'm going to ask you to give me the English meaning of that Latin word. We'll see who gets it done fastest. And if you're a little slow, it's okay. If you mistype something and make a typo, that's okay. So we just want to test ourselves and try to get ourselves thinking about these things quickly. We want our vocabulary to be automatic. We don't want to have to think about things and look things up. We want to hear a word in Latin and immediately think of its English meaning. So I'll give you a Latin word, and you just type the meaning as soon as you think of that meaning. Don't be chatting anything else while we're doing this. I don't want the chat room to be a silly place. And if you mess around in the chat room, you're just going to get removed from the meeting. So don't do that. All right. So here we go. First word. What does the Latin word vita mean? Vita. If you're slow typing, I'll give you a second to type it. So do your best. Looks like everybody's got that. Okay, so everybody knows what to do now. Next, tenebre, tenebre. And if you don't know, you don't need to answer. Tenebre is darkness. Next up, lux, lux. I think some of you are typing too slow. You know, when you see the first 10 or so responses come in, get ready for the next word. Don't keep typing. You can't come in like 25 minutes later with the answer and, you know, we're already, you know, doing something else. So, you've got like 10 seconds to answer. And if you don't get an answer in by then, just wait for the next word. All right, next up. Fakta, fakta. What does fakta mean? And we can see who the students are who've got the vocabulary really memorized. That's good. I mean, it's only 4 letters, so typing shouldn't be a problem there. Next up, verbum, verbum. Very good. Next up, apud, apud, apud. With. Very good. Okay. I see a funky answer come through there every once in a while, but it means with. Good. Next up, omnia, omnia. What does omnia mean? Very good. All in all things. Okay, very good. Omnia. Principio, principio. And if you're a slow typer, you can just type the first few letters so you can get an answer in, okay? So you don't get crushed every single time. You could just type the first few letters. We'll have an idea if you know what you're talking about. So we had principio, beginning. All right, up next, nihil, nihil. Nihil. And we can make fun of whoever has the worst typing, worst spelling. We can find some funny examples, like I think I saw a bothing in there. So we got bothing, we've got napothing. So we can have some fun with the bad spellings. All right, good. Nihil means nothing. Next up, hominum. Hominum. What does hominum mean? Hominum. So to be exact, it means of men. Of men. It's plural and it's a genitive case. I know some of you might not know what a genitive case is. Most of you might not know what a genitive case is yet, but it's genitive and it's plural. So actually it's of men. Plural and genitive. Okay. Very good. This isn't a time for questions, so just hold on. Next up, ipsum, ipsum, ipsum. Ipsum. Ipsum means him. Very good. Sine, sine, sine. Sine means without. That's very good. Those of you who got that. Erat, erat, erat. Yeah, if we're already on the next word and you're still typing like 3 words ago, just move along with us. Okay. So erat means was. That's good. Let's see what else we've got here. How about, I think that's just about everything for this. Oh, I've got one. Per, per, P-E-R, per. What does per mean? Through, very good. It can also mean by. That's good. So through. Okay, now I'll give you a phrase. In principio. In principio. What does in principio mean? In the beginning. Very good. Very good. In the beginning. Okay, next up. What does sine ipso mean? Sine ipso. Sine ipso. Without him. Very good. Next, per ipsum. Per ipsum. And listen, if you can't type fast enough to respond, at least think of the answer and then you can check to see if you would have been right. So just think of the answer, and then when you see the answers come in, you can usually tell what the right answer is. You can test yourself just by thinking of the answer, okay? So if you're a little too slow, don't worry about it. Just think of the answer. All right, so per ipsum means through him. That's good. How about factum est? Factum est. Factum est. We see a bunch of different things here. Made is, made was made. Those are all kind of right. Now, if you look up in an English Bible, that phrase, factum est, you'll see that it's translated was made. And you may wonder, why in the world did they do that? And the only way that you can answer that question is to actually know what the Greek Bible says. So some of the translations you see in English will not be based on Latin. They're based on Greek, because Greek is really the official language of the New Testament in the Bible. So the Gospel of John is really a Greek book. It's not a Latin book. The Latin we're reading is actually a translation. Does anybody know who made the translation from Greek into Latin? Who made the Latin that we're studying here? Saint Jerome. Saint Jerome. Anybody know when he made that translation? When was the Bible translated into Latin? You can take a guess. Of course, it needs to be a good guess, but you can take a guess. We don't want terrible guesses. All right, 400-ish. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Around 400-ish, 350. That's pretty good. Okay. So Saint Jerome was a Christian who lived in the 300s. He was an expert in all the languages. And the Pope, one more trivia question. Anybody know the Pope's name who asked Saint Jerome to translate the Bible into Latin? You don't need to answer that you don't know. Answer if you do know. No, not Saint Gregory. Anybody know the Pope's name? Anybody get that? I think in chronology we talked about that. Starts with a D. Nope, not Leo. Starts with a D. Looks like no one's, and I don't want to let you start Googling stuff. It's Damasus. Very good, George. I don't know if you knew that or if you quickly searched it, but not Dominic. Okay, good. So anyway, yeah, remember that we're reading a translation of the Greek into Latin by Saint Jerome. So when you have an English Bible, the only English Bible that translates the Latin is the Douay-Rheims Bible. That's actually a translation of the Latin, but most English Bibles will translate the Greek, so the translation might not line up exactly right. Okay, back to our quiz here. Next phrase I'd like you to translate is lux hominum. Lux hominum. Lux hominum. Light of men. Light of men. Very good. Next, translate in tenebris. In tenebris. In tenebris. In the darkness. Very good. All right, so it looks like at least half of you are pretty comfortable with lesson 1. So let's bump it up a little bit. I'm going to ask you some words and phrases from lesson 2, okay? So we'll do the same thing, but we'll bump up to another lesson. First word from lesson 2, homo. 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 It's singular, so you should not write men. You should write man. Homo means man. Now, here's a little confusing thing, all right? Because this word homo, in Latin, it means one thing. In Greek, it means something else. So when you look at English words, you may see an English word with the word homo in it, like homogeneous. And you may think, well, you know, I studied Latin and homo means man. So homogeneous must mean like man genius. And that's not true, okay? That's not right. In Greek, the word homo means the same. So homogeneous comes from Greek, and it also comes from, it's kind of a mess, right? It's a mixture of like a Greek word and part of a Latin word, and it means the same kind, homogeneous, all right? So sometimes it's not so simple because the word can be used in 2 different languages and have 2 different meanings, and homo is an example. So if it comes from Latin, it means man. If it comes from Greek, it means same. So just remember that figuring out what words mean isn't always so simple. All right, so the first one was homo. Next up, what does the word lumine mean? Lumine. Lumine. Light. Very good. Very good. Next up, mundum. 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 World. Very good. Not of the world. Mundum just means world. Next up, let's see here. What does the word hic mean? Hic. Hic. This. Very good. Very good. I'll give a couple seconds for you guys. All right. Next up, venientem. 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 What does venientem mean? Venientem. Yeah, if we've already moved on to a new word, don't type the previous word because then it'll look like you're answering that for the present word and you'll kind of look crazy. So if you already hear that we're on to the new word, just you missed your chance. All right, next up. What does the word perhiberet mean? Perhiberet. 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 Yeah, a lot fewer answers. Nobody's excited about that one. Verbs are a little more difficult. Perhiberet. There we go. So maybe one student will answer, and then all of a sudden your memories will kick in. You say, "Oh yeah, I remember that one." But we know who the first answer was. We know who gave the first answer. All right, next up. Omnem. 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 And try to think of the exact meaning in the reading, okay? Don't take like a wild, don't throw a handful of rocks at it. Try to think of the exact meaning. Omnem. Omnem. I wouldn't say all. There's a better translation of omnem. There you go. Connor got it. Every. Not everything. Every. Okay. Omnem. It's actually singular. So it's kind of a weird word because it refers to lots of things. It says every, but it's singular. So it's every thing. So every is a better translation there. How about illuminat? Illuminat. Illuminat is a verb. What does illuminat means? And again, if you can't type fast enough, just think of the answer. And you can test your thoughts when you see the other answers come in. Now, illuminat is a verb. So try to get this exact. You know, just because you have the word light in there somewhere, or you've got the word lumen in there somewhere, doesn't mean it's a good answer. Illuminat means shines, okay? I don't think the lesson teaches illuminate, so you guys are just cheating and writing the Latin word again. Yeah, actually no, you're right. The lesson says illuminates, okay? But it also can mean shines, illuminat. Good. Okay, next up. Let's see what else I can find here. How about Deo? Deo. Pretty easy one. Deo. That's good. How about nomen? Nomen. 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 No, it does not mean mane. Nomen. Nomen is name. Josh, you wrote no one. I don't know what you're thinking about. Nomen. I don't mean like no men. I mean the Latin word nomen. Okay. Means name. Next up, the verb. Verbs are always a little more difficult. Crederent. 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 Yeah, let's try to be exactly right on this. Let's see who can get it exactly right. Looks like Lara got it right. Might believe. Crederent. They might believe is the exact translation. Okay. Too late now since I already said it. Yeah, it's okay. If you haven't gotten to lesson 2 yet, it's all right. Just testing. So for some students, it might have been all review for lesson 1. Next word, said, S-E-D, said, said. What does said mean? Very good. That looks like an easy one. Okay, a few phrases. Ready? A few phrases. What does the phrase missus a Deo mean? Missus a Deo. Missus a Deo. Not sent to God. Missus a Deo. Yeah, two options there that could be correct. Sent from God is true, and sent by God could also be true. Okay, that little word "a" means by or from. So sent by God or sent from God. That's good. Okay. How about and remember, try to be exact here. Think of the lesson, try to be exact. How about de lumine? De lumine. De lumine. Not to the light. I don't think of the light. Let me see what the lesson actually gives you in the in the actual lesson, it's concerning the light. So those of you that got concerning, you get the you get the prize, even though there's no prize, but if there was a prize, you'd get the prize. Concerning the light, that's the best answer. Okay, here's the next one. Next one. Venientem in mundum. Venientem in mundum. Venientem in mundum. Try to get it exactly right. So think. Some people might answer before you, but they might be wrong. Venientem in mundum. Not sent into the world. Remember, the word missus means sent. This is venientem in mundum. Coming into the world. Not came to the world. Venientem is present tense. It means coming into the world. Okay. Next up, in mundo erat. In mundo erat. In mundo erat. In the world was, that's good. In the world was. For world was, no, that's not good. In mundo erat. In the world. In the world was. Okay, that's okay. In the world. Anna, you got in the world, but you forgot erat, which means was. In mundo erat. Okay, here's another one. Non cognovit. Non cognovit. Non cognovit. Not knew, did not understand. Looks like some of you non cognovit the answer. Non cognovit. Did not know, not knew, did not know, not did know. Did not believe, no, not believe. Cognovit. Believe is credit. This is cognovit. Did not know. Comprehend, you pulled that from verse 1. Comprehenderunt, that's not the same verb. This is cognovit. Some of you might be saying, I don't know. It means did not know. Okay, good. So that's a good overview of the vocab. Now here's the important point of this. When you're doing these translation exercises and stuff like that, there's a temptation to cheat. There's a temptation to do it one time, write the answers and submit it and say, there, that's done. But you really didn't follow the instructions. The instructions tell you to repeat these exercises until you have it all mastered and you can write out the translation with no help. So the difference in your studies, and this is a choice that you have to make as a student, you can fake it and pretend that you're getting the work done, submit an assignment, and I'm going to mark it complete because I'm going to assume that you followed the instructions. But if you really want to learn the language, you're going to need to memorize the vocabulary. That's what's going to help you in the future lessons. So I really want you to take your time and master the lessons and not think that you're fooling anybody by, submitting assignments that you really haven't completed. Just because you can look at the lesson and copy the words into the translation exercise and submit it doesn't mean you've learned the lesson. So The goal is to be able to be comfortable with the language, like something like this, to just be able to talk about the meanings of the words, to know what the words mean, to be able to answer a question on the spot, to think of the meaning of a word on the spot. That's our goal. That's what it means to be fluent in a language. So I just want to encourage you not to try to cut corners and submit translation exercises when you haven't done them a few times to learn the vocabulary. Make sure you do it a few times and then submit to me your final copy, okay? But we want our knowledge of the language to be quick and ready or automatic. That's what we're going to need if we're going to learn to translate. So it looks like you're doing pretty well. And I know usually the translation exercises look pretty well. What I don't see your quiz grades, okay? So when you take quizzes, the quiz is scored automatically. I don't see your quiz grade, so I don't know if you're getting like 10% on your first try or if it's taking you 750 tries to finally pass it. I don't know that, but I see the translation exercises. So if you have any difficulty with these lessons, make sure you ask for help, okay? Don't like sit there in misery when you might just need some help learning how to study the lessons or things like that. But what we want to do is we want to study these lessons and master the vocabulary, because this think about it, all Christian writing. So if you talk about writings of the saints, anything else, all Christian writing, if you study the church fathers and saints, you'll see that they all love sacred scripture. They all study sacred scripture, and most of the time they're teaching sacred scripture. So if you learn the vocabulary of sacred scripture, you learn much of the vocabulary of all the saints and doctors of the church, because this is what they're talking about. Okay, so we want to learn this vocabulary because it opens up for us all Christian writing, and we want to be really comfortable with this vocabulary. The other reason why it's really helpful to study Latin reading carefully and do the translation exercises is because if you want to also learn Greek, which I encourage you to learn, if you find this pretty easy, Greek is just as easy as Latin, and you study it the same exact way. If you learn the Latin and learn the Latin translation, the Greek word order is almost exactly the same as Latin. So you can almost match it word for word from Latin to Greek. So when you study Latin, Greek becomes very, very easy. And just so you know, before I forget about this, I'm going to start offering Greek live classes on Thursday. So tomorrow at this same time, if you'd like to study Greek, if your parents would like you to study Greek, you can join me for a Thursday meeting and we'll study Greek together, okay? If you're doing well in Latin reading, you're going to see Greek is very easy. And by studying these languages, you put yourself into a rare group of students who know these crazy things in modern society. So anyway, hopefully your studies are going pretty well with Latin reading. And really, once you get the hang of it, we just continue doing those exercises for lessons and lessons and lessons through a couple courses, okay? So anyway, if you'd like to study Greek with me, I'll be doing that tomorrow. Same time, pretty much same method of study. The first thing we have to learn is the Greek alphabet, because the alphabet's different. You have to learn how to read Greek. And then once we figure that out, which takes a little bit of time, then it gets pretty easy. All right. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen here for much of the rest of the time. Let's take a look here. I'm going to share my screen. And I know this might be a little bit small, but that's okay. I'll zoom in a little bit. All right, so what I'd like to do is take some time, like I said, for these lessons. I'm not going to teach the lessons because they're already taught in the written lessons online, and I want you to learn to study text, okay? So as a student, some people say, well, I'm a visual learner, or I like to learn by what. Well, the problem with that is that we often don't get a choice, right? In order to be a great student, you're going to have to learn to study from text. So even if you do have a certain preferred learning style or whatever, it doesn't really matter, because to get far in studies, you're eventually going to have to learn to study without much help, especially when you get smarter and there's fewer and fewer people available to explain things to you. You have to learn how to study on your own and study from text. So what I'd like to do is in our live class meeting, sort of go beyond the text lessons and use this time to do some more than I can do in the printed lessons. And I'd like to especially talk about vocabulary because I'd like to help you to improve your ability to read English and even write in English, because you can learn to use more intelligent words than like the normal street language. But I'd like to focus on the vocabulary bit and talk about the vocabulary. So let's take a look at this. I'll zoom in some more. So just to look at vocabulary, as you learn the Latin vocabulary, whenever you're learning new Latin vocabulary words, I'd like you to think about English words that have those Latin words in them, okay, that are derived from those Latin words. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. If you're really interested in studying vocabulary like this, if you're sort of a vocabulary nerd, like I am, I like to study these things. One thing that you can do that's helpful is in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, everybody has a subscription and access to the Oxford English Dictionary. And it's a very special dictionary. And I want to show it to you real quick. Can everybody see this blue screen on my screen? Can you just give me a wave if you can see a blue dictionary screen? Okay, good. So this is the Oxford Dictionary, and you all can sign into this. It's at oed.com. It's the best dictionary in the whole world, as you'll learn. But if you go down to this sign in right here, it says sign in with username and password as an institution, not as a personal account. Don't use that one. Use this one over here. And if you go to that page and sign in with OED, Oxford English Dictionary, CLAA, you can have access to this dictionary. Now, what's cool is, I think this should still work. If you start typing in let's say we have the word missus in Latin. If you just start typing in a Latin word, you'll start to see all words in the dictionary that have those letters in them. And you used to be able to use an asterisk to search. Yeah, if you type the Latin word, it'll pull up words that begin with that word, and it will help you to start finding different examples. So let's use a better example. Like we have the word hominem. So if I type in homin in the English dictionary, I see all these words pop up that start with homin. And so it's a good way for me to start finding words in English that come from these Latin words. So for example, if we look up hominoid, right, whatever that means, it means a primate of the superfamily Hominoidea, a taxon that includes the family Hominid. Now, you may have no idea what that means because it's talking about, taxonomy, which is like classifying different kinds of animals in biology. But if you came across that word in reading something, like you just happened to stumble into some, biology reading, like maybe a biology textbook or something like that, you might come into contact with that word and say, I have no idea what that word means. But if you've studied Latin, it's not really true that you don't know what that word means, because you can take a good guess, right? If you're going to take a guess, if you came across the word hominoid in the chat, tell me, what would your guess be as to what that word means? If you saw the word hominoid, never saw it before, you wouldn't just be a dum-dum and say, I don't know. You'd use your knowledge of Latin to try to figure out what it means. What would your guess be if you saw the word hominoid? Yeah, something about man. Very good. Okay. You can be sort of vague like that. Like, I don't know exactly what it means, but I know it has to do with man, because I know that stem, homin, means word. I don't know what the purpose of posting all that was, but Jude, the password is OEDCLAA. OEDCLAA. Okay, so that shows you how you can use the dictionary to look into English vocabulary using some of your Latin words. Let's find another one here. Hold on a second. Let me open this one up. So if we find another of these Latin words in our lesson, let's take, try to find a complicated one, like cognovit. Let's try cognovit. If I can get this. 1 second. I've got this Zoom bar blocking my. Let's try cognovit. So we type. Oh, that's not right. Cognov. So we don't have anything for cognov, but if we back up and knock one letter off, we've got all kinds of stuff. Cognomen, cognoscente, cognovit, cognosce, cognoscable, cognoscative, cognoscability. So if you came across this word in English reading, cognoscability, the lazy student, the lazy student will say, oh, I never saw that word before. I don't know what that means. But if you've studied Latin, you can look at that and say, well, I don't know this word, but I can take a guess. I bet it has to do with what? What would you say? Give me some answers in the chat. If you had to take a guess and you came across that word while you were reading, you wouldn't have to pretend you don't know anything. You could take a guess at it. What would you say? Has something to do with knowing, right? Has something to do with knowledge. And if we look at the definition here, we see that cognoscability means knowableness. Okay, so for the ability for something to be known, all right? And then from the context of what you're reading, you could kind of figure out what the rest of it means. But you see how the knowledge of the Latin gives you a good sense, a good starting point to figure out what a lot of complicated words mean. And usually that's enough for you to understand the meaning of the word and keep reading. All right, let's try another one. Let's think in our first lesson, we had principio. So if we just start with princip, we come up with all these words: principle, principle, principally, principality, principled, principium, principal point, principal axis, principiate or principate, principalship. So if you saw any of these words, what would your guess be as to what that word means? What would your guess be? We'll look one up. We'll look up principality. So if we look up principality, we read position, rank, or dignity of a prince. We say, well, that doesn't really remind us of our Latin word, but it does. Who can explain to me how the rank of a prince relates to the word principio in our Latin studies? First in line, very good. Okay, so first in line, or the Emperor Augustus, when he took that word princeps, he took it to mean the first citizen, the first member of society. Okay, so that's what prince means. It means the first. We have a king and then we have a prince. He's the first in succession. Okay, so it does come from principio. So anyway, that's how you can use the English dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary, with your Latin words to study the English vocabulary that comes from these different things, all right? But let's look at our lesson and we'll talk about some of these words. Give me 1 second. I want to sneeze real quick. I'll be right back. 1 second. Okay. So here in lesson 2, we've got fuit homo missus ad Deo. And like I said, we've got this word homo, which means man, and we'll see that all through English vocabulary. And we can't confuse it with Greek homo, which means the same. We then have missus. Missus means sent. Who can think of an English word that's derived from the Latin word missus? Who can think of an English word that's derived from the Latin word missus? Mission, well, what does that mean? What is a mission? Think about it. What is a mission? Missile. What is a mission? If it's related to the word missus, what is a mission, or what is a missionary? Adel just wrote missionary. Someone who's sent. Good. A mission is a sending of people to accomplish some task, right? If I'm on a mission, it means I'm sent to do something. If no one has sent you, you're just a crazy person, doing whatever you want. Well, then it's not really a mission. You're just doing your own thing. But to be on a mission means to be sent. Okay, good. A missile, obviously pretty simple. A missile is something that's sent. Now, if you look at the word message, Victor wrote message. What's different about message? Why would I say message probably is not derived from missus? What's different? Yeah, it's not got the same spelling, probably not from the same stem. Okay, so you got to pay attention to the spelling. Next, we have the word nomen. Okay, nomen, and in English, we'll find words derived from this, like, for example, in Latin grammar, George just put it there, nominative, right? We have a case. We have one of the cases in grammar is called the nominative case. Well, what does that mean? You know this word nomen, you know what that means. What does nominative mean? It's the case that's used for what? The nominative is the case that's used for naming things. Good. It just means to name things. It's just a basic name for the idea. Good. One of you wrote nomenclature. Nomenclature. Anybody know what nomenclature means? Nomenclature, or you could take a guess. It means something that has to do with naming. Yeah, nomenclature. Good, George. The art of naming things. So in the Garden of Eden, when God created the world and he created Adam, one of the first things that he gave Adam to do was to come up with the names of things, right? Came up with the names of things, and that's nomenclature. And it's not very simple if you think about it. You've got to come up with names for things, and those names have to be meaningful. So you've got to understand the nature of a thing before you can name it, unless you're just making up crazy names. Like when parents name their children and they don't really have a purpose for their name, they just like think it's cute, so they can name their child like, dog face or something like that because they think it's interesting. Or like Elon Musk, who names his kids like with numbers and, algebra symbols. Usually when we name things, we try to figure out, we try to give them a name that relates to the essence of what they actually are. So for example, in the Bible, we'll read names like Isaac. Does anybody know what the name Isaac means? Anybody know what the name Isaac means? Come on. There we go. James got it. Laughter. Good. So Rebecca was told by an angel that she was going to have a child, and she laughed at the angel because she was an old lady. She said, "No way am I going to have a kid. I'm like 100 years old." And then when the child was born, it was named Laughter because it was a reminder that she had laughed at what the angel said to her. How about Esau? Jacob and Esau. Esau is also named Edom. Does anybody know what Edom means? Or Esau? Anybody know what either of those names means? Yeah, Athanasius got it, covered in hair. So the baby was born, it was covered with hair, and the parents named it Harry. I'm glad we don't name kids like that anymore. That'd be pretty terrible to be born, with like crooked eyes or something like that, and your parents would actually name you Crooked Eyes, right? That wouldn't be very nice. So sometimes I guess it's good to give cute names. Usually parents have the names picked out before the children are even born. But back in the old days, man, they were pretty mean. If you were born with any problems, that was your name. I guess that's how they identified you. So that would be bad. Yeah. So that's one way. That's one method of nomenclature, right? That's one way to name people, to give them names based on their appearance. And of course, they don't pick their good appearance. They don't say like nice hair or pretty lips. They say like, one eye or something like that. So it's not very nice. Hairy one. I wouldn't want to be called Harry my whole life. His name Edom means red because he was red colored when he was born, so they named him Red. It's kind of funny, actually, if you think about it. You called red your whole life because you were red when you were born. Big feet, easy. Okay, all right. I know where you're going to go with this, so calm down. Okay. All right. So anyway, nomen means name. Nomenclature is the art of naming things. I'm sorry we got crazy there for a minute. All right, next up, let's look at the word venit. Okay, Venet. No more name jokes. That's enough. Time to move on. Let's look at Venet. All right. We have this stem veni, and there's all kinds of words that come from Venet. Let's see if anybody can think of one. Can you think of an English name? Think of the Latin word. Think of what it means, and then think of any English word that might be derived from Venet. Venice, I'm not sure about that. You can check that out though, because you can actually look, if you look on the dictionary, for example, if I type in Venice, let's see if it's on here. If you look for a word, Venice is on here. You can see this is named after a kind of glass. But what you can do is up here at the top, there's a section on etymology, and etymology is the history of the word, where the word came from. So you can click on that, and you can see that this word Venice came from the French word Venice, which came from the Latin Venetia, which doesn't have anything to do with Venice. So no, it doesn't come from Venet, okay? Think of an English word that comes from Venet. Venus, no, I think you're just guessing now. Margaret guessed vent. That's pretty good, right? Vent. Adventure, that's definitely a good one. Think of the season of Advent. What do we celebrate in the season of Advent? Not venial. I think that's different. That's a different word. Advent. Yeah, we celebrate the coming of Christ at Advent. So we see there that stem ven is in Advent, and we have the preposition ad. What does the preposition ad mean in Latin? Who can tell me? It means to. Good. Not from, to. So Advent means coming to us, right? Christ coming to us. That's what Advent means. Not very fancy when you think about it. Pretty simple name. All right, next up. Lumine, you can think of words that come from lumine in English, right? Give me an example. What's a word that comes from lumine in English? Lumine. Illuminate, simple enough, right? Illuminate. Yeah, easy. All right, that's easy. How about omnes? We have omnes, it means all or every. Who could think of an English word that's derived from omnes? Omnes. Should think of something in catechism. You learn some words in catechism that are derived from omnes. Let's see here. Omnivore. All right, let's look at some of these. So we have omnipotent. Rebecca wrote omnipotent. What does omnipotent mean? What does omnipotent mean? What does omnipotent mean? Omnipotent means all powerful. Good. Omnipotent. Okay. I saw one suggestion there. All things stink. No, that was not right. I think you're thinking of like a potent smell, maybe, but no, that's not what omnipotent means. Potent means powerful. Omni comes from omnes, which means all. Omnipotent means all powerful, able to do anything. Very good. We had omnivore. Omnivore. Lara wrote omnivore, I see on there. What does omnivore mean? If something is omnivorous, most of you are probably omnivorous. Your parents probably think you're omnivorous, means eats everything. Good. Okay. Omnivorous means eats, so you eat plants, you eat meat, crayons, whatever you can find, you're willing to try. Omnivorous means eats everything. Good. Any other suggestions on here for words derived from omne? We have omnivore, omnipotent. What else? Another word from catechism. Another word starts with omni. Omnipresent, that's a good one, James. What does that mean? What does omnipresent mean? All present. What does that mean? All present. I don't think that helps us much. Present everywhere. Very good. So present everywhere. Omnipresent. Let's think of another one. Omni something. What else can you think of? Another word, fancy word from catechism. I don't think omnious is a word. I think you might be thinking of ominous. That's something else. The letters get changed around. How about omniscient? How about omniscient? What does omniscient mean? Omniscient. What does that mean? All knowing. Very good. Means knows everything. So a person who's a know-it-all, you could call him omniscient, but that's usually not how it's used, though. It's used to refer to God who knows all things. Okay. Edmund wrote, I don't know much, and he misspelled no, so that doesn't look very good. Next up, how about crederent? Crederent. Can we think of an English word that's derived from crederent, or just that stem cred? Creed is good. Credit is good. Let's look at credit real quick. What does the word credit mean? If I say that I bought this with a credit card, what in the world is a credit card? What does it mean to have good credit? What does that mean? Credit. It comes from this verb, crederent. Crederent doesn't have anything to do with paying later, right? Doesn't have anything to do with extra. If I say I've got a credit card or I've got good credit, what does that mean? What does credit mean? Yeah, you guys don't know, do you? You go around using these words, talking, pretending you know this stuff, and you don't even know what the words mean. What does credit mean? Yeah, very good, Josh. The belief that you will pay back. The belief that you will pay back. It means trust. That's good, George. All right. So a credit card means that a bank trusts you and they let you take this piece of plastic into a store and they let you get a bunch of stuff for yourself. And the bank actually pays for it for you because they trust that you'll pay them back. And so the credit card is basically like a trust card. You know, the bank trusts you. You swipe the card, the bank sends the money, and the bank trusts that you're going to pay it back. Okay. Well, George, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of credit, right? If all it was plastic, then you could just go grab a piece of plastic out of the garbage and take it to the store and see if you can buy stuff with it. You can't, right? It's not just plastic. It's a symbol of, you know, your trustworthiness to repay. And the store doesn't care because the store just gets the money from the bank. The bank's the one that gives the credit. All right. So we can see that credit, even in credit card or good credit, is related to this Latin word, crederent. One of you wrote creed, which is obvious because we say I believe. What else? How about incredible? What does incredible mean? If I say this is incredible, or Victor wrote credible, which is the opposite of that. What does incredible mean? Yeah, not possible to believe. So if I say that's incredible, I mean, I can't believe it. So, you know, some of you wrote amazing, and that really doesn't make much sense. I know we use it like that. You know, you say, you know, oh, you know, I got a good grade on my Latin quiz, and your dad says that's incredible. You know, that's actually not a very nice thing to say because he's saying like, I don't believe that you can get a good score on your Latin quiz. So that wouldn't be very nice, right? But we use it like that. We use it to mean like, oh, that's amazing. But we should probably find a better word than incredible, because if someone says something good about themselves and you say that's incredible, that's kind of a nasty thing to say, right? You know, oh, I drew a picture and my mother, you know, my mother told me it's nice. Well, let me see. Oh, that's incredible. You know, I don't believe that your mother said that that's nice because it's not nice. So we probably want to use a different word. Incredible means I can't believe it. I don't believe what you've said. That's incredible. All right. So if you say, you know, I was walking down a street and you know, I had my homework in my hand and a Tyrannosaurus Rex jumped out of the woods, grabbed my homework and took off. So I don't have my homework today. That would be incredible. You know, that would be incredible, meaning I don't believe what you're telling me. All right. So good. Credible. Let's do one more because we need to wrap up here. I don't want to do mundum. Let's do factus. Can you think of an English word derived from factus? English word derived from factus. Factus. I think that's a pretty easy one. Factory. What is a factory? Think about it. What is a factory? What is a factory? A factory is a place where things are made, right? That's right, a place where things are made. Let's think of some other words derived from factus. We've got factory. Facility is a little bit different. That comes from a different word. Let's think of some other words derived from factus. Fact does come from factus because a fact is something that's done, right? So if you say, I cleaned my room, and your mother asks, is that a fact? Is that a fact? It means, did you actually do it, right? Is that actually something done? Or if I say, I'm not making this up, these are facts. These are real things that have been done. Zoriana wrote manufacture. That's a good one. What does manufacture mean? Easy if you study Latin. Don't write make. It's a little more complicated than that. Manufacture means made by hand, right? Made by hand. So if we say that cars are manufactured by robots and machines, that's really not a good use of the word manufacture. Manufacture means to make with hands, okay? Handmade, manufactured. Because the Latin word manus means hand. Manus means hand, and then factus means made. So manufactured means handmade. Anything else in there? I don't think so. I think we got just about everything. Oh, there's one more. How about vera? Vera is in the Latin there. Can you think of a word that comes from vera in English? Veritable. That's a good nerdy word. Lara wrote aloe vera. That's very good. Verify. That actually is a good one. Let's look at verify for a minute. Josh wrote verify. What does it mean to verify something? What does it mean to verify something? What does it mean to verify? To show to be true. Good. Okay, to verify means to make sure this is true. To check for facts. Good. All right, to make sure it's true is to verify. Okay, very good. Any other words that are derived from vera? We have veritable. Henry wrote veritable. That's good. Variety, Zoriana, you misspelled it. It's spelled with an A, so that would prove that it's not from vera. Let's talk about aloe vera, though. Aloe vera is a plant, right? Aloe vera is a plant. Some of you might think it's a cream, but it's actually a plant. The cream comes from the plant. What do you think aloe vera means? Aloe vera. Take a guess. I don't expect you to know this. If you look at a plant and you say the name of that plant is, it's an aloe vera plant. Plant of truth. That's a guess, right? True something. That's a good guess. All right. Take a guess. What is aloe vera used for? Right? What do you use it for? You don't eat it, obviously. Some of you might, but you're not supposed to. You don't eat aloe vera. What do you do with aloe vera? What do you do with it? It heals burns. Good. What does it give you? So let's say you burn yourself, right? Or you've got sunburn or something like that, and your mom pulls out her book of secret healing cures, and it's got the aloe vera plant in there. What does aloe vera mean? One of you got it. True healing is a good guess, Josh. True something. True something. Let's look it up in the dictionary. What does aloe mean? Let's see if we can get any clue from this. Aloe, an aromatic resin or wood, resin, decaying, blah, 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 blah. No, that's not going to help us. Various plants. No, that's not going to help us. A drug made from the juice of plants of the genus aloe, having a bitter taste and unpleasant odor. Hopefully you don't know that, right? Hopefully you don't know that aloe vera is bitter. You shouldn't know that unless you choose to eat it. So that doesn't help us to know what it really means. Bitter experiences, bitter occurrences. No, 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 no. Let's look at the etymology for aloe. Comes from, oh, it's just the name of the plant. We want to go beyond that. Aloe vera. All these different possible meanings. So that doesn't help us very much. I think what aloe means, I think the word aloe vera means true comfort. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. So you can dig that up on your own if you want to. But yeah, it's a healing plant, right? You put it on burns, it comforts your skin. True comfort, all right? Moisturizer. Bitter truth, that's pretty funny, aloe vera. And let me just say, Victor wrote bitter truth. That's the danger of being too literal when you try to figure things out, right? It's you can just like pull words and stick them together. I really don't think that the aloe vera plant is called the bitter truth plant. So you've got to be a little more thoughtful than that. I know that Victor, I think you're joking there, but that's pretty funny if you are joking. But aloe vera, vera means true. We know it means true something, so we'd have to figure out what aloe means. All right. So anyway, the point of that, what I wanted to do today was just get you thinking in terms of English vocabulary. Let's get out of that screen. Get you thinking about vocabulary, right? Because it's actually a fun study. It's a fun study to learn Latin words and then think of English words that are derived from them. It's also very helpful on a serious note. It's very helpful in reading when you come across words that you've never seen those words before, but because of your Latin studies, you're able to take a good guess, right? You're able to make an intelligent guess at the meaning of a word. You'll find that very helpful over time. All right. So that's all that I wanted to talk about today. It got silly a little bit, but some of these things can get funny. But I hope that that's helpful just to get you start thinking about English vocabulary and how it comes from Latin words. And the same is true in Greek. So if you join me for Greek studies, we'll talk about the same kind of stuff, and we'll see lots of English words that are drawn from Greek words as well. So if your parents are interested in having you study Greek with me, first of all, enroll in the Greek courses on the Academy Study Center and get started with the online lessons. And then join me on Thursdays for live classes. We'll talk about Greek. We'll learn how to read Greek. I'll teach you the alphabet, teach you how to pronounce Greek words, and then we'll start doing Greek reading exercises. So that's all for today. If you don't have any questions, you can take off now. I'm not going to go over anything new. If you do have any questions, or if there's anything you'd like to talk about other than silly names or eating crayons and things like that, we can hang out and chat a bit. So any questions, feel free to fire away. Otherwise, you're free to go, and I'll catch you either tomorrow or next week. All right. God bless everybody. Take care. Yeah, George, Latin is easier because it uses English letters. That's actually why we normally start with Latin before Greek. It's just easier to get started with. Greek, you really have to work on the alphabet before you can do anything. You're welcome for class time. Thanks for coming. It's not hard. Just like anything else, you need to study it. If you don't study, everything's hard, right? Brushing your teeth would be hard. What makes it not hard is studying it and practicing it. That's what makes it not hard. That's why you have to take on hard things, because if you take them on and practice and study, you can actually do hard things, and that's what makes it helpful. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Greek is easier once you know the alphabet. Yeah, that's pretty obvious, right? Once you learn the alphabet, if you don't know the alphabet, it's pretty hard. Once you learn the alphabet, it makes it a lot easier. So we'll go over the alphabet tomorrow. We'll try to make that clear, and then we'll start reading. You just have to immerse yourself in it. That's really how you learn things. You just have to jump in, get yourself into it, and it just takes time. That's true for any subject, any subject. You just have to get into it. You can't dabble with things. You've got to get into them and really immerse yourself in it and give yourself time to learn it. Can we try a Greek word? Well, the problem is I can't type Greek words, right? I can't, my keyboard in this Zoom thingy ding doesn't allow me to type Greek words. But what we're going to learn is how to, it's called transliteration. I'll type this in the transliteration. Yeah, Henry, that's a pretty, pathetic attempt to type Greek, right? It's just an English word with Greek letters. But what we're going to do, listen here, this is serious. In Greek, we're going to learn how to transliterate, how to transfer the Greek letters into English letters. And so when we want to write a Greek word, for example, if I write the word anthropos, which is a Greek word, I can use English letters in place of Greek letters. And then we can talk about the Greek words by just typing them with English letters. So that's called transliteration, and that's what we'll normally do. Okay, so we'll normally in these discussions, or if we've got a good group of students and there's not a lot of fooling around and stuff like that, we'll just turn the microphones on and we can just talk about it. So we don't need to type everything, okay? When I start these meetings, I like to keep microphones off because we get some crazies in here, and we need to figure out who the crazies are first, and then things calm down and we can actually talk together. But we can also type using transliterated words, and that makes it pretty simple. So we'll do that tomorrow. We'll go over the alphabet. I'll teach you the names and sounds of all the Greek letters. We'll practice reading some words together, and then we'll slowly start reading Greek, and then we'll do the same kind of studies. Anybody who wants to join me is welcome. You don't have to know anything about Greek. I'll teach everything from the beginning. Any other questions about Latin studies or about Greek studies? Let me talk for a minute about the question everybody asks, which is usually, why should we study these languages? Why should we study them? There's all the normal answers, but let me give you a different answer that I think is the right answer. When you get into adult life, the way that you make a living in our society, the way our society works is you've got to compete with other people, right? You've got to compete for jobs, you've got to compete for sales, you've got to compete for customers. And what competition does is it challenges us to make ourselves the best. We've got to have something that others don't. We've got to offer more than others can offer. So the more language skill we have, the more we can separate ourselves in terms of usefulness, because we're able to get into other languages. We have a better understanding of the English language and so on. So the simple answer that I would give for why you should study classical languages is because it gives you an advantage in the future, okay? Think about applying for a job, think about applying for a job, and, on your resume, you're asked to list the school you went to, list your work experience, list any skills that you have and things like that. If you've got the same skills as everybody else, right? You've just got the same boring list of normal stuff. You're not giving yourself an advantage. And so one of the goals in study is to pursue the most challenging studies you can, to have the broadest range of knowledge that you can, to actually cause yourself to stand out and offer a business or a school or a customer something that no one else can. So, that's how you've got to think about your studies. You can check the boxes and just do what's required, but you're setting yourself up for trouble when you do that, because you're going to get done with school, which is a fake world, and then you're going to go out into the real world where nobody wants to give you money just because you've got a nice smile, right? That you've got to compete for it. Everybody's looking for the best product, everybody's looking for the best service, and you've got to offer people what other people don't offer. So that's real life. The most challenging studies you can pursue, you should pursue in order to set yourself apart and make yourself more useful. So that's the real reason. You know, people don't like to talk about money because they think talking about money is bad, but the reality is you've got to eat, you've got to have a place to live. You're going to have to earn a living unless you choose to become religious. You're going to have to earn a living in the world, and in order to do that, you're going to have to compete. So use your education to prepare yourself for that real world. I want to be an archaeologist. That's awesome. So you've got to think about what it's going. I mean, there are a lot of other people who want to be archaeologists, right? And there's not like 600 million archaeologist jobs available. So if you want to be an archaeologist, you've got to ask yourself, how can I become the best archaeologist? Not an archaeologist, but the best archaeologist, because that's how you actually find a way to work, earn a living, and do that work. Like when I started studying classics, I said, I want to be the best at what I do. I want to be the best classics teacher. I want to master every lesson. I want to study as much as I can. I want to be the best classics teacher. And when you make yourself, or when you strive to become the best, it's very easy to find work and things like that because you're simply better than other people at it. So if there's something you want to do in your life, the question you should ask is, what do I need to do to be the best at that? That's what you really need to think about. And I can tell you a quick story about how I decided to become a classicist. You know, everybody would tell me, if you study classics, you're never going to make a living, right? And I always heard people talk like that. They say, oh, you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should do this because it's easy to get work. And well, I wanted to study classics, and everyone was telling me that I couldn't make a living studying classics. But one day I was driving in my car and I was listening to, I was in New Jersey at the time, and I used to listen to the New York classical radio station, and the New York Orchestra was on the radio, and I could hear the sound of a piccolo. Does anybody know what a piccolo is? You know what a piccolo is? A piccolo is a small flute. It's about the size of a pencil. Okay, so imagine an instrument about this big. That's what a piccolo is. And I'm listening to this orchestra and I can hear the piccolo. It's a really high-pitched flute, but it's very, very small. And I was thinking to myself, at some point in his life, there was a guy who decided that he wanted to be the best piccolo player in New York, right? He wanted to be the best piccolo player. Now, you think that when he decided to play the piccolo, that he was encouraged by people around him that playing the piccolo was a good career choice? He probably didn't get much support. You know, most guys, when they join a band or they take lessons, they play the cool instruments like the saxophone or the drums or something like that, or they learn to play guitar. But this guy chose to play the piccolo, and he probably got picked on for it. Walking around with his little pencil instrument while all the other cool kids had saxophone cases and drums and cellos and stuff like that. He's walking around with his little pencil case of his instrument. But he chose to be the best piccolo player. And as an adult, he's got a career as the piccolo player in the New York Orchestra, the New York, Philharmonic Orchestra. And when I thought about that, I said to myself, that guy, by becoming the best piccolo player, made a life for himself. So if you can make a living playing a piccolo, I'm sure you can make a living teaching classics. So the piccolo player in the New York Philharmonic Orchestra inspired me to devote myself to classics and gave me confidence that I could find a way to make a living doing something that I want to do. I wouldn't say go where there's no competition. That's really not what it's about. That's kind of, because there's important work that needs to be done. It's not just about finding a place where there's no competition. I mean, you could be like a fish cleaner and there'd be no competition, right? But it's because it stinks. Nobody wants to do it. It's about, doing what you really want to do, thinking about what you really want to do with your life, but realizing that you need to be great at it. You need to really study and work and practice to be great at what you want to do. Because the world doesn't need doctors. The world doesn't need priests. The world doesn't need lawyers. The world needs great doctors. The world needs great priests, great lawyers. It doesn't need doctors and lawyers. We don't need 10,000 priests. We need some great priests. That's what we need. So whatever you want to do, you could be a professional dog groomer. There are people who make a living just taking care of dogs, but they're good at it. You can't stink at it and make a living. You can't have a car wash that leaves the cars dirty. You've got to be good at it. So when you think about your studies and think about things you want to do, like one of you wrote before, be an archaeologist, you've got to ask yourself, what do I need to do to be the best archaeologist? And then do it, right? Okay, so George is asking about Pliny here. He's saying, enough of this talk about careers. Let's talk about Pliny. In Pliny lesson 6 on the motion of planets, there are too many capitals. Sorry, I got this little thing. I can't read that. Can you type that again? Because for some reason, there's a little chat button that's blocking that. There's too many capitals in the word motion in the title. I don't know why that's a big deal. My aunt, Margaret says, my aunt owns her own shop for dogs. Yeah, think about that. You can do something you love, but you've got to be good at it. I don't know why that's important, George. Why does it matter that there's some capital letters in the title? What's the problem there? Any other questions? Latin studies, Greek studies, studies in general while we're on here. A couple more minutes and then we'll wrap up. I'm just asking, if there's a reason why you're asking about that in Pliny, just let me know. I'm not sure what you're thinking. Any other questions? I'll check it out, George. I'm not sure. I don't know why that would be any kind of problem. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap up here. I've got my own homework to do today, so I've got to get going. Is there a word erat in Greek? Yeah, we're going to see that in the very first. You're going to be able to match up the Greek and Latin words directly, which is pretty easy. So we'll see all that. We'll start that tomorrow. All right, so seeing no more questions, and Anna's questions don't count because she's in my house. I can talk to her here. But I'll see you guys tomorrow for Greek lessons. How different is modern Greek from ancient Greek? It's very different. The letters are the same, but pronunciation's different, We can look at that a little bit too. Once you learn the ancient Greek alphabet and the sounds and things like that, we can look at some modern Greek just to see what the differences are. You might not understand if you're hearing modern Greek people talking, you might not understand it because the pronunciation is different. But if you learn Greek, if you learn to read Greek, you can figure out to read most modern Greek, okay? Like if you were dropped off in the middle of Greece, you could probably read the signs and things like that. So mostly pronunciation is the difference. Just like Latin pronunciation changed over time, same thing with Greek. Okay. So Mrs. Michael fixed the Pliny capital letter crisis. That's been repaired. Anything else? That's a good question, Lara. It's important to understand the modern languages. All right, so thanks for coming. I'll see you guys tomorrow if you want to study Greek. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Get your lessons done. Get assignments turned in. Get through your work. Put in the time. There's really nothing more important than your studies during these years of your life, and they open up doors for you once you reach adult age. So get your studies done. Get as much as you can done, and send any questions along if you need help. All right? My pleasure. God bless you all. Take care.